All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Ayin Zayin, and we are picking up Emir Hashem at the Mishnah. Hopefully, you did a little bit of your homework today, or last night, and let's begin. I want to thank Yehuda and Josh for giving the shir while I was gone, and let's begin. We'll say we have a beautiful Mishnah ahead of us today. Says the Mishnah, Evari Chata. So we'll say the next couple of Mishnayos are going to focus a little bit on what we'll call ta'aroves, a little bit on mixtures. Not ta'aroves like basar b'chalav, but instead different types of sacrificial mixtures. So the Mishnah says as follows, Evari chata shenes aru be'evari ola. We'll say the following situation. You have limbs of a chatos, which were mixed up with limbs of an ola. Now both say, what's the chiluk over here? So remember again, a chatos, the limbs are not offered up on the mizbeach. The only thing that's offered up on the mizbeach are some of the fats. The rest of the chatos is consumed, as opposed to ola, where the entire carbon is offered up on the mizbeach. So therefore, the Mishnah says as follows: I have a situation now where limbs of a chatos were mixed up with limbs of an ola, and obviously I can't discern which is which. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yitin Lamala. Rabbi Eliezer says just put it all on the mizbeach. V'roa ani es basar achatos milamala. Kilu hein eitzim. Suppose it's actually a very interesting shita. Rabbi Eliezer says you could put it all on the mizbeach. How can you offer up limbs of a chatos? To which Rabbi Eliezer says you could essentially view the limbs of the chatos not as limbs, but rather as what? As wood. Firewood. So we'll say again, remember there's a din of a ma'aracha, there's a pyre on the top of the mizbeach, and therefore again, halacha l'maisa, we just view the extra limbs as if they are wood on top of the mizbeach. So the Gemara says, the Chachamim say, look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Yitin lamala ala mizbeach. It's in the wide lines, about 5 lines in. V'roa anias basar chatos shehu bebal taktiru ki'ilu hein eitzim dechevan delo haklak Torah mechavin shari. So we'll say Rabbi Eliezer's point over here is that since halacha l'maisa, my intention is not to offer up these limbs of the chatas as a carbon, I'm simply viewing them as firewood, and therefore there is no problem. The Chachamim disagree, and they say no. You can't go ahead and put limbs of a chatas on the mizbeach if they don't belong there. So what happens? Chacham momrim tu ubar tsurasan. We'll say tu ubar tsurasan literally means let them sit until their form changes, which means let them sit until the next morning. V'yetzei lebeis hasreifa. And then take them out ultimately again to the Beis HaShrefa. We'll say the Beis HaShrefa was the place outside of the Beis HaMikdash where you would burn different types of karbanos or different items that became invalid. Take a look at Rashi. V'yitzu leBeis HaShrefa deleslu hu roen v'ka'aver b'chol shimer le'ishim hu b'bal taktiru shekvar imurav kirvu v'na'aseh ha'basar shirayim. So we'll say fundamental machlokes sotim Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, with a case that one would have to imagine could easily occur. You have limb mix-up, limb confusion. Limb confusion happens all the time. I don't know if it happens all the time, but one could imagine that it could happen all of the time. So again, in this case over here, I have limbs that are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach mixed together with limbs that should not be burnt on the mizbeach. Ola is fully burnt. Chatos is not fully burnt. Limbs of the chatos gets mixed in with the limbs of the ola. What do? Rabbi Eliezer says, not a problem. Burn it all. Burn it all. How can you burn limbs of a chatas and they don't belong there? Because I'm not viewing it as limbs of a chatas. Instead, what am I viewing it as? Wood. I don't have in mind to burn it in a sacrificial capacity. I just have in mind to burn it like a piece of wood. Therefore, again, there's no problem. Chacham say you can't do that. Once it has the identity of a sacrificial item, you can't go ahead and just simply say it's not a carbon, rather it's just wood. And therefore, the Chachamim say, Tubar tsurasan, let it sit until the next morning. Take it out to Beis HaShrefa, burn it outside of the Beis HaMikdash as you would deal with any invalidated sacrificial item. Good, says the Gemara. My time, Rabbi Eliezer. What's the fundamental machlokes? What is Rabbi Eliezer's logic? Omerkra, Rabbi Eliezer will say, the pasuk says, "V'la mizbeach lo ya'alu l'reach nichoach." So we'll say the pasuk over here says as follows. The pasuk says, "Carbon reishes takriva osam laHashem, ve'ela mizbeach lo ya'alu l'reach nichoach." Now, we'll say that is referring to Sa'or and Dvash, to honey and to leaven. Now remember again, so the pasuk says that carbon reishis takrivu osam, that there are times when you do offer up Sa'or and Dvash, When do you offer up Sa'ar and Devash in a sacrificial capacity? So Sa'ar is by the Shtei Halechem, right? Because the loaves by Shavuos are Chametz. And Devash, where is Devash offered? By Bikurim. Right, remember again. So dates are one of the Shivas Haminim. Shivas Haminim are part of Bikurim. So those are brought in a sacrificial capacity in those two contexts. However, when they are brought, they are never brought on top of the mizbeach. Ve'al mizbeach lo ya'alu the reach nichoach. They're never brought to the top of the mizbeach. Bikurim, remember, are placed on a basket by the base of the mizbeach. The shtei alechem ultimately are consumed by the kohanim, so they're brought in a sacrificial capacity, but never brought on the mizbeach. So what does that have to do with anything? Watch this. L'reach nichoach iyatamala. But Rabbi Eliezer darshans this pasuk. What he does is he takes this phrase, ve'el hamizbeach lo ya'alu l'reach nichoach. It shall not go up on the mizbeach as far as a pleasing aroma, and he separates this pasuk from he separates this phrase from the context. Remember, the context is Sa'ar and Devash. He separates out this phrase from the rest of the context. Ve'el mizbeach lo ya'alu l'reach nichoach. Watch this. L'reach nichoach i'atam ma'ala. You cannot offer up certain things on the mizbeach as a reach nichoach, which means you can't offer it up in a sacrificial capacity. Aval atam ma'ala l'shem eitzim. But you can offer it up for what? For the sake of wood. We'll say, so Rabbi Elazar's drasha is like this. Even things which can never be offered up on the mizbeach for reach nichoach, which means even things which cannot be offered up on the mizbeach in a sacrificial capacity, can be offered up as wood. What does it mean can be offered up as wood? In other words, can be placed on the top of the mizbeach in a non-sacrificial capacity like firewood. This is Rabbi Eliezer's drasha. Ela mizbeach lo yalu l'reach nichoach. Anything which cannot go on the mizbeach as a pleasing aroma, which means in a sacrificial capacity, can go on if you're placing it on betoras wood. If you're placing it on as wood for the mizbeach. Therefore, let's apply this back to our case. Therefore, Rabbi Eliezer holds that when you have limbs of a chatos which get mixed in with limbs of an olah, you could burn the entire mixture. Chatos doesn't belong on top of the mizbeach. That's correct. You're not burning the limbs as chatos. Rather, what are you burning it as? What are you burning it as? Wood, fuel, and therefore again it's permitted. Beautiful. So the Gemara says, "V'Rabbanan." The Rabbanan say, no. Rabbi Eliezer, you are divorcing that phrase from the rest of the context. Mi'et rachmana osam hu di'i atam ma'ala aval atam ma'ala l'shem eitzim. So the Rabbanan say, Rabbi Eliezer, come on, you can't do that, right? And I'm saying, Rabbi Eliezer, you can't do that. Meaning, at the end of the day, the pasuk is talking about specific items. The pasuk is talking about sa'ar, leaven item, right? Yeast or sour, right? Yeast or chametz, we'll call it, and honey. That's the context here. So in that context, the Rabbanan say, I agree with your drasha, but we disagree with your application. You're taking that phrase and you're applying it to all sacrificial items. I'm telling you that that's not the case. I'm telling you that in fact, halacha l'maisa, that phrase is dafka stated by what? By Sa'ar and Devash. To tell you, Sa'ar and Devash do not belong on the Mizbeach, But if what? But if you ended up putting it on the Mizbeach, guess what? You don't have to take it down. Why? Because once it goes on the Mizbeach, you could treat it like what? Like fuel, like wood. You don't have to treat it like a sacrificial item. But that's unique by Sa'ar and Devash. You can't begin to apply that concept everywhere else. So the Gemara says, Rabbanon, meet Rachmana Osam. The Torah Dafka is discussing those particular items. Osam hu di'i atam ma'ala, aval atam ma'ala l'shem eitzim. It's only Sa'ar and Devash that you're not supposed to offer up on the Mizbeach, but if you did so, you don't have to take it down because it could count ultimately again as wood. Aval midi achrina lo. But who's to say you could apply this drasha to other circumstances? So we'll say, what does Rabbi Eliezer count? Rabbi Eliezer, osam hu d'raboy lecha kevesh kimizbeach aval midi achrina lo. So Rabbi Eliezer says, you're right. The pasuk is obviously coming to teach us about Sa'ar and Devash, and the novelty or the chiddush or the hosafa that the Torah is coming to teach us dafka by Sa'ar and Devash is to go ahead and teach us that the ramp is like the Mizbeach. But by other sacrificial items, that is not the case. Look at Rashi for just a moment. Osam, bereisha dekra ksiv carbon reishis takrivu osam, va'asar udevash kaiki deprecious lael. So we'll say ultimately again when the beginning of the pasuk says carbon reishis takrivu osam. So osam refers to sa'ar and devash. Mayish chalahavi mehen shtei alecha min asar shi reishis l'cham minachos ubikurim min al dvash v'al mizbeach lo yalu aval ata ma'ale l'shem eitzim. Aval midi achrina lo. Rashi says ashachal akol shemeno liishim denafik misefer dekra kama lo kai. So we'll say ultimately again, Rabbi Eliezer says that in fact you're right. There is something specific that is being learned out from the pasuk vis-a-vis sa'ar and devash, but that is a din of equating the ramp ultimately again with the mizbeach proper. That's ultimately again the specific drasha ultimately by sa'ar and devash, but the general drasha that if you go ahead and it shouldn't be offered up on the Mizbeach, but if you did so, ultimately, again, it can be treated like Eitzim. That's not unique to Sa'ar and Devash. Rabbi Eliezer is creating a more expansive drasha to apply to all sacrificial items. The Rabbanan will say, Tarti Shmamina. The Rabbanan will say, you can learn out both of these concepts ultimately, again, from the same phrase. Rashi says over here, Rabbanan Tarte Shmamina. I'm sorry, look at Rabbi Eliezer. Lahachi ksivosam, lemeuti asar dvash, lemeuti shrai me'as haras al mizbeach lo yalu, dermabinon minei kevesh kimizbeach. So I'll say Rabbi Eliezer goes back and he uses that word osam ultimately to teach me that by sa'ar and devash there is a unique aspect, which is that the ramp of the mizbeach is the equivalent of the top of the mizbeach. Kidesanya b'taras kanim, emi el mizbeach, kevesh minayin tamalomar el mizbeach. That not only do you not take the sa'ar and devash up to the top of the mizbeach, but you don't even take it to the ramp of the Mizbeach. The Rabbanon will say, you can learn out both of these concepts. So we'll say, so bottom line, we have a fundamental machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon, as to what you do with limbs of a chatos, which are mixed in with limbs of an olah. Rabbi Eliezer says you just burn the whole mixture. How can you burn limbs of a chatos? After all, again, they don't belong in the Mizbeach. To which Rabbi Eliezer will say, we don't look at it as limbs of a chatos, so we look at it as wood or fuel. Rabbi Eliezer, Chachamim, absolutely not. The entire mixture has to be burned outside of the Beis Hamikdash. We'll say, what does the machlokes center on? The machlokes centers on the interpretation of one simple phrase, which is ve'im elam mizbeach lo ya'alu the reach nichoach. If it can't be brought to the mizbeach, the reach nichoach. Rabbi Eliezer understands that phrase to mean there are certain things which cannot be brought to the mizbeach for reach nichoach, i.e., in a sacrificial capacity, but they can be burned in a fuel capacity. And I will say again, I want to be clear. Even Rabbi Eliezer is not advancing this drasha lechatchila. It's not a lechatchila dika drasha, but at the end of the day, ex post facto, especially in a case of ta'arovis where you have no way of discerning which limbs are which, you could go ahead and burn the mixture for the sake of fuel. The Chachamim do not subscribe to this drasha because they feel the drasha is disingenuous. Why is it disingenuous? Because at the end of the day, the context in which the pasuk is written is by where? By where? Sa'ar and Devash. Therefore, to take something that is written by Sa'ar and Devash and suddenly make a general principle for all sacrificial items, the Chachamim feel is not correct. So the Gemara goes weiter. Masnisin deloki aitana. Our Mishnah does not reflect the view of the following Tana. Which Tana? This Sanya, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So we'll say, now we're going to see a different version of this machlokes. Our Mishnah has one version of the machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. This brisa now is going to state a different version of the machlokes. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. So I'm sorry. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Lo nechtkor Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Chachamim alei vari chatash shenes arbe vari ola sheyikrevu. So let's listen to this. In this version of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim agree that halacha lemaisa, if limbs of a chatas get mixed in with limbs of an olah, that everything is burnt on the top of the mizbeach. Everyone agrees on that particular fact, right? Shikruvu, berova v'nirva. So I will say, if you have a case of an animal which ultimately either sodomized the person or was sodomized by a person, shalo yikruvu, that such an animal is not offered up as a carbon. So alma nechlaku. What do they argue about? Alevare ola temima shenis arvu be'evare ba'alas mum. This is a very interesting case. What do they argue about? They're arguing about cases of limbs of an ola, a regular ola, we call it an ola temima, a kosher ola, which gets mixed up with limbs of an ola ba'alas mum. So we'll say in this case over here, we're taking chatas out of the picture, because in Rabbi Yehuda's version, when you have the limbs of a chatas which get mixed up with the limbs of an olah, everyone agrees that it can be offered up on the mizbeach for the sake of fuel, for the sake of fire, not in a sacrificial capacity, but rather again in a fire capacity. What are they arguing about? Limbs of an olah, a regular olah, which get mixed up with limbs of an olah that is a ba'alas mum. So also remember again, if an olah has a mum, what's its status? You can't offer it. So we have limbs of an olah, which was an olah tamima, kosher olah, mixed together with limbs of an olah, which was a ba'alas mum. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yikrivu. Rabbi Eliezer says, offer up the mixture. V'roa ani lemala kilo ein eitzin. So we'll say Rabbi Eliezer's logic is the same. Rabbi Eliezer says, offer the whole thing up, and I will view ultimately again the limbs of the blemished olah as if what? As if they were fuel. Fine, same thing as we had before. The Chachamim say lo yikrivu. The Chachamim say no, you cannot offer it up. So the Gemara says, let's analyze this. Rabbi Eliezer, Mashna rovea v'nirva de lo chazu, ba'alas mum nami lo chazu. Let's analyze this for just a moment. So the Brisa brought down 3 different cases. We're going to take the first one off the table because everyone agrees with that. In this version, if you have limbs of an olah mixed up with limbs of a chatas, everyone's agreeing that what? That you could offer it up as fuel. So we're taking that one off the table. There are 2 other cases. Case number 2 is an animal that was sodomized or did sodomize, in which everyone agrees that what? Is puzzle, cannot be offered up. And then there's the third case, which is the machlovkes case, of limbs of a good olah mixed together with limbs of a blemished olah. Rabbi Eliezer says, offer it up, and because you could just view it as wood, and the Chachamim say, don't offer it up. To which the Gemara asks, I don't understand. Why is the case of the olah mixture, when you have the limbs of a olah tamima and limbs of a ba'alas mum, when those are mixed together, Rabbi Eliezer says you could offer it up. Why is that different than the case of the animal that's sodomized or wasn't sodomized? And I was supposed to say, let me be clear. The case of the animal, the nirva and the rova, the sodomized case of the animal that did sodomize or was sodomized, that case is where the limbs of that animal, or that animal got mixed up with another animal as well. All of these cases are where you have animal mix-ups. That's what's happening over here, or I should say mixtures. Yet Rabbi Eliezer holds that in a case, for example, if you were to have an animal which was violated, and that animal was mixed up with another animal, Rabbi Eliezer would say that what? You do not offer any of that on the mizbeach. Instead, you take it out to Beis HaSreifa and you burn it. Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. You burn it. So I'll say, the shaila the Gemara is asking over here is, why does Rabbi Eliezer make a distinction between a case of the nirva and rova, the animal that was sodomized or did sodomize, that was mixed with other animals? Rabbi Eliezer says, in that case, you can't offer up anything. Yet, in the case of the olah that's a bal mum, that gets mixed up with other olos, you can offer it. I was supposed to say, what's the shaila? The shaila is from a halachic perspective. What 2 items should be similar? An olas bal mum and an animal that was rovea or nirva should really be the same thing. They're both sacrificially disqualified. If you're allowing one of them to be offered up as eitzim, as Rabbi Eliezer does in the case of an olas bal mum, then the truth is you should say the same thing in the case of rovea and nirva as well. Why the distinction? Amud Bezer will say. Amr Afuna says, no. What's the case over here? Amr Afuna, beduka sheba'ayin, bedukin sheba'ayin va'ali b'Rabbi Akiva. So we'll say, Rafuna says that what are we talking about over here? Well, this is actually incredible, like hashgacha pratis as well. Bedukin sheba'ayin means it's often translated, I don't, as a cataract, right? But what it means is it's some type of blemish in the eye. So the idea over here is about say, but I just not tell you that. I'll tell you the ashkacha pratis in this in just a moment. So say when we talk about an olas bal mum, what kind of bal mum are we talking about over here? So we're talking about what the Gemara calls a relatively minor mum. It will disqualify for sacrificial purposes, but it is a relatively minor mum. V'alibud Rabbi Akiva, the Amar im alu lo yerdu. We'll say Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that everybody agrees that an animal that has a bedukin sheba'ayin, right? A bedukin sheba'ayin, an animal that has some type of eye blemish, is not offered up. But Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that it's because it's a relatively minor blemish. Halacha l'maisa, if you did offer it up, if you brought it on the mizbeach, then what's the halacha? You don't take it down. You don't take it down. So also I said the idea over here is that's the Baal Mum, where Rabbi Eliezer says that if an Olas Baal Mum gets mixed in with other Baalei Mumin, if an Olas Baal Mum gets mixed in with other kosher Olos, then what's the halacha? You offer them all up. Because what's the mum we're talking about over here? A dukin sheba'ayin, a cataract. And what? Rabbi Eliezer subscribes to Rabbi Akiva's opinion that because of the minor nature of this mum, although you shouldn't offer up the animal, if you placed it on the mizbeach, what's the halacha? You don't take it down. That's the case of the Baal Mum. That's dramatically different than the case of Rabbi Nir. So what's the Hashgacha Pratis? What's the Hashgacha Pratis? The Hashgacha Pratis is, remember again, Sunday Shabbos, Shivasa B'Tammuz. Remember again, the entire story of the Churban begins with the story of Kamsa Bar Kamsa. Right? And remember again, after Bar Kamsa is expelled from the party, he goes to the Caesar, and the way he starts the revolt is how he shows the Jews are revolted against you. How? You could see, he sent the carbon, and they're not going to go ahead and offer it. And what does Bar Kamsa do, the Gemara says? He makes some type of mum in the animal, the Gemara says, that for the Gentiles, they would still offer it up, because they have sacrificial law also, but for us would be disqualified. The Gemara says, what did he do? Dukin sheba'ayin. He injured the animal's eye in a way that by the umos ha'olam, the animal will be totally fine, but by Klal Yisrael, he couldn't offer it up. Incredible. So also, the Gemara says as follows. So also, you now watch this. So therefore, just follow the flow over here. We're now in the second version of the Mishnah. I should say, alternate version of the Mishnah. In this version, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim are agreeing in the case of the Chatas Ola mix-up that everything gets offered up on the Mizbeach. What do they argue about? They argue about the case of limbs of an Ola Tanima mixed together with an Olas Baal Mum. Rabbi Eliezer says offer it up. Chachamim say take it all out to the Beis HaSreifa. You can't go ahead and offer it up. We then asked, according to Rabbi Eliezer, why is this case different than the Rovea Nirva case? To which the Gemara says, because the mum we're discussing is a relatively minor mum, like the Dukin Sheba'ayin, and it reflects the view of Rabbi Akiva, who holds that because of the minor nature of the mum, although you should not offer it up, if you put it on the mizbeach, you don't have to go ahead and take it down. But asks the Gemara, 1 second. We'll say Ayin Zayin with days, second line down, second word from the end. Emar da'am Rabbi Akiva di Avid lechatchila mi amar. So we'll say 1 second. But that's not the lashon of the brisa. The lashon of the brisa is that Rabbi Eliezer holds that if you have limbs of an Ola Tamima mixed together with an Ola's Balmum, then what Rabbi say? Yikravu. Yikravu means what? Yikravu means not only can you offer it, but l'chatchila. You may. You are permitted to offer it. It's not saying that if you offer it, you're not an avarion. That if you offer it, you're not going to Gehenna. Yikravu means you can offer it. L'chatchila. So Gemara says, 1 second. You're telling me now that we're talking about Dukin Sheba'ayin, a relatively minor mum, and a reflexive view of Rabbi Akiva, who holds that if the carbon was offered up or put on the Zech, you don't have to take it down. Even Rabbi Akiva holds his Shita b'diavad. If you already put it up on the Mizbeach, you don't have to take it down from the Mizbeach. But Rabbi Eliezer does not hold that what? Rabbi Akiva does not hold the Chatchila. You could place that animal on the top of the Mizbeach, to which the Gemara says, Emar than Rabbi Akiva di avad lechatchila miyamar. Even Rabbi Akiva holds that halacha lemaisa. If you put the animal on the mizbeach, then ex post facto b'di'aveh, you can leave it there. But lechatchila Yisrael doesn't allow me to place it on top of the mizbeach. Amra Papa hacham askina. Both say what's the case? Kigon sha'alu al gabe kevesh. Both say the halacha over here is, or I should say the case over here is where the carbon itself or the mixture of the limbs was already placed on the ramp. Take a look at Rashi, second line down from the top, left-hand column. Kigon shalu ala kevesh, v'chivan l'Rabbi Akiva lo yardu min ha-mizbeach, hani ma'alon l'chatchila mi-kevesh l'mizbeach, d'kaim alon, kishem sha-mizbeach mekadesh, kacha kevesh mekadesh. We'll say we're talking about a case over here where it's already on the ramp. If it's already on the ramp, Rabbi will say, then what? Once it's on the ramp is the equivalent ultimately of as the top of the mizbeach. Therefore, once it's already on the ramp, that's Rabbi Eliezer says yikravu. Or Rabbi say, so even Rabbi Eliezer would seemingly agree that you shouldn't lechatchila place it on the mizbeach. The case that we're talking about over here is where it's already on the ramp. Once it's already on the ramp, then what? Then you are permitted to go ahead and actively take it from the ramp and put it on the top of the mizbeach. If that's the case, ihachi afilu beinahu. So I'll say, here's what's interesting. If that's the case, then now that what you've established is a very defined case of limbs of an olat of olas balmum, and we've defined it as a very minor mum, like dukin sheba'ayin, that is already on the kevesh, and now we're saying can be taken to the top of the mizbeach to be burned. Why? Because once it's on the ramp, it's as if it's already on the top. If that's the case, I'll give you even a better case. Leave me alone with the mixtures. Just make this a case of a non-mixture. Let this be a case of what? Where the Kohen accidentally went ahead and took limbs of an Olas Balmum, and I will say, where did he put it? Where did he put it? He put it on the ramp. And let Rabbi Eliezer say that's what? That halacha l'maisa, he can now take it to the top of the mizbeach and ultimately burn it as wood. And you don't have to get into the entire situation ultimately of a mixture. Ella taimei de Rabbi Eliezer. Miet rachmana mum bam. So we'll say, listen to this. The Gemara says, so Rabbi Eliezer's logic is really a little bit differently. The Gemara says, Rabbi Eliezer says, Miet rachmana mum bam. Hu de lo yiratzu. Ava al yidei taroves yaratsu. So Rabbi Eliezer's logic is really a little bit different. That ultimately, again, the Torah, when discussing ultimately the invalidation or the disqualification of a carbon that is a Baal Mum, uses the lashon of bum. Bum, that when the mum is inherent and the mum is visible in the animal itself, that is when it becomes sacrificially disqualified. Rashi says bum, mashma kishem b'fnei atzman. So bum means the mum is in the animal and the animal is by itself. Hudlo yiratzu. Ha ayidei ta'aroves yiratzu. But if the animal is mixed in with other animals, then ultimately, again, the mum does not disqualify. So we'll say, so now we're adding on another layer to this discussion. So Rabbi Eliezer has to have this as a case of ta'aroves, because Rabbi Eliezer's real shita, we'll say this is the real shita, is that a mum only disqualifies in an animal when the animal is by itself. When the animal is part of a mixture, ultimately, again, the mum does not disqualify. Now, what does it mean the mum doesn't disqualify? Obviously, the animal cannot become sacrificially valid, but what it does mean is I have the license to offer up the disqualified animal that is in a mixture of qualified animals as eitzin, simply as wood, and not in a sacrificial capacity. The Rabbanan will say, mum bam, hu de lo yiratzu. So we'll say, the Rabbanan darshan like this. When the mum is in the animal, that's when it's not sacrificially valid. Ha'avar mum yiratzu. Now also listen to this. If the mum goes away, let's say also you have something called the mum over, so the mum goes away, the Rabbanon will say ultimately again that the animal will be sacrificially valid. I will say now, why is that? You'll say to yourself, that's obvious. Bless you. That's obvious, right? If the animal has a mum, it's possible. If it goes away, then it should be kosher. Why is it not so obvious? So why is it not so obvious? Why is that not so obvious? Because remember, we learned, if you hold yesh dichui etzel bali chayim, if you hold that once an animal is set aside for sacrificial non-use, there are shitos that say once set aside for non-use, it's never again usable. The Rabbanan say that's not how we paskin, and halacha l'maisa again is only mum bum. It's only when the mum is there. But if the mum ultimately goes away, then halacha l'maisa, the animal will once again become kosher. Rabbi Eliezer mi bum bahem. Rabbi Eliezer learns this out from the phrase, it's a double lashon of bum bahem. Rabbanan bam bahem lo darshi. The Rabbanan don't make that drasha. Ihachi roeh harachmona achshrei. So we'll say now. Here's the Gemara asks an interesting question. Why does Rabbi Eliezer use the lashon both in the Mishnah and the Brisa? Beroeh ani as basar achatas or by the baalas mum. He says roeh ani. The lashon is roeh ani kilu hein eitzim. I view the disqualified item in the Mishnah being the limbs of the chatas, or in the Brisa being the limbs of the olas balmum. I view them as if they are wood. And say, instead of saying, the Gemara asks, why does he say roa ani? Instead, what should he say? Harachmana achshrei. According to Rabbi Eliezer Shita, I will say, this is kosher midaraisa. In other words, what he's suggesting, Rabbi say, is not his own innovative idea, but this is his interpretation of the psukim, which means that he understands this to be the Ratzon HaBori, the will of the Torah. Why does he use lashon of roa ani? To which the Gemara says, the Divreim Ka'amalu. Really, Rabbi Eliezer uses that phrase vis-a-vis the Rabbanon. How so? L'didi rachmana achrei. So Rabbi Eliezer is like this. According to my understanding, I believe that what I'm advancing is biblically sanctioned. That halacha l'maisa, remember again, going back to whichever drasha you want to use. Halacha l'maisa, when you have the mixture of the invalidated items with the valid items, you can burn the entire mixture, looking at the invalid items as what? As wood. As wood. As simple eitzim. Right? That's what I believe. That's mid'araisa. However, lididahu, but according to you, Rabbanan, odu limiha basar ba'alasmum ke'itzim dami. But you, Rabbanan, at least agree with me that what? At least agree with me that when it comes to the limbs of an olas ba'alasmum, at least agree with me that those are considered like eitzim. At least agree with me that it's considered to be like wood. The midi dahava abasar chatas. For it should be no different, ultimately, again, than the meat of than limbs of a chatas. I will say this way in the brisa. In the brisa's version, remember again, Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan are agreeing that if you have limbs of a chatas which gets mixed in with limbs of an olah, you could burn the entire mixture. Rabbi Eliezer says, I believe the same halacha applies in the case of an olas balmum. Rabbi Eliezer says, but at least you, Rabbanan, agree with me. Why don't you say, you agree with me in the case of the chatas? Agree with me also in the case of the olah that the limbs of an olas balas mum should be the same thing as the basar chatas. But the Rabbanan will say no, they're two different things, and I'll tell you why. Hacham mi'isi, hasam lo mi'isi. But we'll say here is the fundamental difference. Here it's disgusting. Here it's not disgusting. So very strong. What does that mean? The Rabbanan will say to realize like this: we could agree with you in a case of limbs of a chatas which gets mixed in with limbs of an olah. Why? Because they're both sacrificial items. It just happens to be they have different halachos. One ultimately is offered up on the mizbeach, that's the olah, and one is not, that's the chatos. In the case of a balas mum, we'll say then that carbon has absolutely no place on the mizbeach. It is sacrificially invalid. So the Rabbanan will say, even if we agree with you, in a case of limbs of a chatas which gets mixed up with limbs of an olah, that you could burn the entire mixture together on the top of the mizbeach, we can't agree with you when limbs of an olas balas mum get mixed in with limbs of an ola tamima, you can't offer up that mixture. Why? Because the presence of the limbs of an olas balas mum, of literally a blemished sacrifice, make the entire mixture ma'os, unseemly, and therefore again cannot be offered up. We'll say we'll do the halacha l'maisa right after this next Mishnah. We'll do it all together. So we'll say, so we end off, the Gemara does not seem to resolve the machlokes Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Namely, again, what do we do in the case when we have a mixture of limbs of an olah together with limbs of a chatas? Do we burn the whole mixture on the mizbeach, ultimately looking at the limbs of the chatas as wood like Rabbi Eliezer, or do we have to take the whole mixture out and burn it outside of the base of Mikdash? To be determined in just a few moments. Next Mishnah, Eivarin be'eivarin ba'alimono. So we'll say, watch this. Now, in this Mishnah, so we'll say this Mishnah picks up really on the brisa quoted in the Gemara below. So watch this. Eivarin be'eivarin ba'alimumin. So we'll say if you have limbs of one carbon mixed with another carbon. Now Rashi points out over here, Eivarim shal olos harbe be'eivari olos ba'alas mum. So listen to this. So we'll say this is the case of the brisa. So if you have limbs, this is all olah. First we should talk about mixture of olos, an olah and a chatos. This is all olos mixed together. The difference just is some of them are kasher karbanos and some of them are ba'ali mum. So what's the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer Omer im karav rosh echad mehem yikrivu kol harashin. So Eliezer says if one of the heads was offered up, you could offer up the rest of the heads. Kirayim shal echad mehem yikrivu kol kirayim. Right? So we'll say if the kirayim of one of them was offered up, you could offer up the rest of the kirayim as well. We'll say Rabbi Eliezer shita is as follows. Rabbi Eliezer says that halacha l'maisa, once you've offered up something, you could offer up the rest. Why? Because Rabbi Eliezer says you can make the assumption that the item offered was what? Was the invalid item, and therefore again everything else is kosher to be offered up. The Chachamim say no. Afilu kervu kulam chutz me'echad mehen yetzi lebeis hashreifa. The Chachamim say no. Even if you offer up everything, but there's still one left, that one item left has to be taken out to the base, burned outside of the base. So we'll say this is actually quite fascinating. Rabbi Eliezer says that we view, if something was burned, we view the first item as if it was the davar ha'aser. The Chacham say even if there's one item left, you can't burn it because you have to assume that that item is the davar ha'aser. Very interesting machlokes. Says the Gemara. Amar Elazar. This is Amar Rabbi Elazar. Lo hichshir Rabbi Eliezer ela shnayim shnayim. Well, see, even Rabbi Eliezer, when he makes this statement, that you could assume that the first item that was offered up was the invalid item, but say that's only if you're dealing with groupings of two. Shnayim shnayim. Look at Rashi. Ela shnayim shnayim. Rashi says zug zug yakrivim. Only if they're being offered up in at least pairs. Di'ikal meimar migo dahai lavisurahu dahai nami lavisur. Because the boss said you can always make the migo that when looking at each of them individually, you can make the assumption that neither of them is aser. Dahainavi lavisuru visura azule bahu dekarav kodem shenimlach aval echad deleka migalo. So even Rabbi Eliezer would agree that if you're looking at each of the sacrificial parts on their own, he would not be able to rely on the fact that the prohibited one was already offered up. Aval echad lo. Master Rabbi Yirmiyah raises a kasha. Master Rabbi Yirmiyah raises a kasha to this from the Mishnah, and he says as follows: But here's what I will say. The problem is, the end of the Mishnah says the Chachamim say that even if you offered all of them up except for one, if there's one left, it's less to be taken out to the Beis HaShreifa. So we'll say that sounds like the Chachamim are talking about a case even of what? Even of dealing of one. Individuals, not like we just said before, that the Mishnah has to be talking about cases of pairs. What does it mean when the Mishnah says even if there's echad, even if there's one left, zug echad? It means also even if there's one pair left. So we'll say, how do we paskin halacha l'maisa in both of these cases? So we have two machloksim, really riveting machloksim between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Machlokis number one, Abosai, is the machlokis of Evarim. Limbs of a chatas which gets mixed in with limbs of an ola. Remember again, ola burnt on the mizbeach, chatas not burnt on the mizbeach. What do I do with the mixture? Rabbi Eliezer telling me I burn the whole thing. What about the chatas? What about the chatas? It's fuel, it's wood, not a problem. Chachamim say no, take the entire mixture outside the Beis HaMikdash. We'll say that's case one. Case two, all ola, but some of them ba'alimum, mixed together with ola tamimas. What do I do with the mixture? Rabbi Eliezer says once you've offered up one, you could go ahead and offer up the rest. And again, with the qualification of the Mishnah dealing with pairs, Chacham say no. Halacha l'maisa, the entire mixture has to be taken out to the Beis HaShreifa. How do we paskin? So we'll say halacha l'maisa. Here we go. The Rambam in Psuli Hamukdashin, Perek Vav, halachos Chaf and Chaf Aleph. Get ready. Here's the halacha l'maisa. In case you get this shaila today, says the Rambam. So number one, Eivari chatos shenis arva be'eivari ola. We'll say if limbs of a chatos were mixed together with limbs of an ola. This is Mishnah number one, our first Mishnah for today. Manichin hakol ad sheyivsidu v'ta'avar tsurasan. We leave everything, we let it sit until literally it forms, its form changes, which means you let it sit overnight. V'sarfin osa ba'azara b'makom shesarfin p'sulam akdashim. We burn it in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, in the place where we burn the valid sacrifices. In other words, we paskin like the Chachamim. So that's case number one, where you have a mixture ultimately again of limbs of an ola, limbs of a chatas. As compelling as Rabbi Eliezer's argument was, we do not paskin like him. The entire mixture is invalid, and therefore you cannot burn it on the mizbeach. You burn it in a specially designated area in the courtyard. That's halacha number one. Halacha number two, which is halacha chaf aleph, Eiver shal ba'ali mumin shenes arvu be'ivari kodshim afilu eiver be'elef eivarim. So listen to this. If you have a limb of an olas bal mum, which was mixed together with, and I'm using ola, but it could be anything, with other limbs of kosher karbanos, even if Rabbi said there's only one invalid limb, even one balas mum, with 1,000 other kosher limbs, what's the halacha? Yetzu hakol lebeis hasreifa. Everything is taken outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi say that halacha l'maisa. What do you see? Pretty much in all cases of carbonic mixtures, wherever you have something invalid mixed in, we go with the approach of the Chachamim and we say that halacha l'maisa, the entire mixture is burned outside of the Beis HaMikdash, paskening against Rabbi Eliezer in both of these cases. That's the halacha l'maisa. Also, I'll share with you a short idea on the parasha. So we know that in this week's parsha, of Parshas Balak, so Balak, the king of Moab, hires the Gentile prophet to go ahead and curse Klal Yisrael. Chumash here by any chance? It's okay. It's okay if it's not the. Moshe, is that a Chumash? Here. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll say so. We know, so Balak hires, thank you. Balak hires Bilam to go ahead and curse Klal Yisrael. So of course we know in an incredible twist of circumstances, so every single time Bilam tries to go ahead and curse Klal Yisrael, not only does it not work, but he ends up uttering some of the most beautiful phrases. But I want to point out something that I think is incredibly intriguing. So there's a certain theme that comes up twice in the course of Bilam's brachas, or Bilam's kala / brachas. So the first time is in Parak Chav Dalit, Pasuk Beis, chapter 24, verse 2. So the Pasuk says, Vayisa Bilam es Einov, so Bilam lifted his eyes, Vayar es Yisrael shochin l'shvatav, and he sees literally Klal Yisrael, literally dwelling, shochin l'shvatav, dwelling according to their tribes. Vatihi alav ruach elokim. So we'll say, so what does this mean that he sees them, where he sees them dwelling according to their tribes? So Rashi says over here, Ra kol shevet v'shevet, Ra she'in pischayim, michuvanim zeh k'neged zeh. You saw that when they camped, so the opening of their tents did not open towards one another. Why? Shelo yotzitz l'soch ol chavero. No one should look inside the tent of the other. So Vayar Yisrael shochin l'shvatav, he saw that the way they arranged their tents, no two entrances were opposite each other. No one should look into the other's tent. So we'll say, so that's fascinating. Then if you look a few psukim later, what does the pasuk say? Again, Bilam says, which perhaps is his most well-known praise, Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkin osecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, Yaakov. Rashi HaKodesh says over here in his Perush, Matovu ohalecha, al shera pischayan she'en mechuvanim zeh mul zeh. Once again, what is he praising? That he saw ultimately again that the entranceways of their tents did not open up one across from the other. Very intriguing. That what catches the attention of Bilam, not once, but twice, is the idea that the entranceway of their tents do not line up to another. That one person should not look into his fellow. So why is this? It's just intriguing. You know, I mean, a little bit embarrassed. The first time I learned the parsha for a couple of years, first time this ever dawned on me. Why is this the piece comes up twice in the course of two psukim? What is it exactly that ultimately is catching Bilam's attention? So the Lubavitch Rebbe, Zecher Tzadik Levrach, in his Likutei Sichos, he writes the following. He says, Gam bisha matzi b'dira sarai, ohel, alav lahakbid al klali hatznius b'miluam. So the Rebbe says very beautifully, and I have to thank Rabbi Ziffer for giving me the Dvar Malchus every week so I was able to see this. So the Rebbe says very beautifully that what Bilam was pointing out is that sometimes when people are in a temporary situation, so sometimes, ultimately, again, they become a bit lax in the laws of tznius. So even though, again, we were a tent dwellers, right? We were the original Bedouin, right? We were going ahead and moving around. So you would think with the placement of a tent, people are not so makbid how they set up their tents. Okay, it's the most center. No, you see, Klal Yisrael was makbid on being tzanua, makbid on modesty. They were careful with modesty. Even in their tent cities. Even in their tent cities. The Rebbe says that's the message that Bilam was so taken. And by the way, remember, understand, the modesty was an incredible and overwhelming thing for Bilam. Because remember, again, I'm both saying, what's Bilam's parting shot? Bilam, after he realizes that he can't curse Klal Yisrael, what does he do? Bilam is wildly successful with one thing. What's his most incredible piece of advice that he gives Balak? Immorality. Remember again, the end of the parsha is the entire episode with the immorality between the Jews and the daughters of Midian. Where did that idea come from? That idea came from Bilam. Bilam says to Balak, listen, I can't curse them, but I can tell you that their Achilles heel is immorality. That lets his whole... So Bilam sees that even in the desert, even when it's an Oel Arai, even ultimately, again, when it's a tent city, even when they're when they're not established in their own land, they're still makbid on the laws of tznius. But perhaps we could suggest something else. That what the interesting lashon of Rashi over here, in both places, is this incredible lashon. Ultimately, again, shelo yotzitz l'soch ohel chavero. You shouldn't look into your friend's tents. Okay, the Mefarshim understand to be the laws of modesty, but perhaps there's a different yisod. What Bilam saw was the strength of Klal Yisrael was that we don't gauge success by looking into the tent of our friends. See, I will say sometimes in life, it is tempting to engage in what we call relative success. What's relative success? That I compare my success ultimately again to someone else. And I will say we do this in a variety of different ways. Sometimes we do it being the tov, being the ra. Let's start with the ra, right? So what happens? I see my friend, and you know what? That guy is mamish, such a menuvel, meshuketz, mituav, and isvar, tameh, all these things. And I say to myself, wow, I am mamish like a tzaddik compared to that guy, right? I mean, look at that guy. He probably says, Rosh is going to have to invent a new level of Gehenna for someone like that. Me, I am doing so well compared to that guy. I don't even have to try all that hard. I just have to do refrain from doing half of the stuff that he does, and look how wonderful I am. And it works the opposite way as well. Sometimes we see people who we really admire, and we say to ourselves, you know what? I'm never going to be like that person. I'm just never going to be like that guy. My lifestyle's not conducive to it. I'm not that kind of person. I don't have the willpower. My family's not like that. My friends are not like that. My community, whatever it is. And what does Bilam say? The godless of Klal Yisrael is that we never engage in the process of relative greatness. Matovu ohalecha Yisrael. You have your tent, and I have my tent. Don't look into my tent, and I won't look into your tent. My tent is always open to you. Hopefully your tent is always open to me. That's not it. It's saying in the pursuit of personal greatness, we never compare ourselves to another. In the pursuit of personal greatness, we look at ourselves, we look at our abilities, we look at our circumstances, and we try to maximize what we each have in our own tent. We never have to measure ourselves up against another. We can never, chas v'shalom, rest on our laurels because they say, oh, I'm so much better compared to that person. Nor should we ever become defeated or deflated because we feel we will not reach the level that we see someone else has reached. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov. Bilam sees Yisrael shochen lishvatav. She'ein pischein, what's the lashon? She'ein pischein mechuvanim zeh keneged zeh. My entranceway is not connected your entranceway. Shelo yatzitz l'soch al charabosai. As we learn in Gan Emunah every single morning, each of us is placed in this world for a particular shlichus. We're all here for a purpose, and it's not to take up space. We're all here for some sacred and divine, incredible mission to accomplish something beautiful. Rabosai, but here's the real yesod. For each of us, it's dramatically different. Your mission is not my mission is not your mission. Your tent is not my tent is not your tent. We spend so much time in life comparing ourselves to others and measuring ourselves up against others. The amazing part is that Bilam was able to see the strength that we have, even though sometimes we can't see it. We should never live lives of relative holiness. We should never live lives of relative accomplishment. We should never live our lives peering into the tent of the other and trying to compare ourselves to the other. Instead, we should focus on the tent we have, focus on maximizing the tent we have, and focus ultimately on living up to our potential. Shabbos.